Ready. You may have heard Ramayana many times, but have you ever heard the story from Sita's side? Today's conversation is about the voice we rarely stop to listen to. In today's episode, I'm in conversation with Pragya Agrawal, an architect by profession and a storyteller by heart. Pragya is born and raised in India and now lives in London. Her debut novel, The Renunciation, retells the Ramayana from Sita's perspective and brings out her quiet strength, courage, and inner journey. So, in today's podcast, we talked not only about Sita but also about Pragya's journey from architecture to writing, her connection with Indian mythology, the research, and the effort behind the book. That too while living abroad and raising two children. And of course, about the book, about Sita, about Ramayana, and about lots of mythological books that we have in our country. She has also given some interesting book recommendations that you would love reading. So watch the video till the end in conversation with Pragya Agrawal in association with Rupa Publication. Enjoy the conversation. Pragya, how are you?
I'm good, Ritu. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Completely my pleasure. The way I enjoyed the book, so I had to do this. I had to talk to you. There must be many people who would like to talk to you and know your thoughts. So it's my pleasure.
Thank you.
So I want to ask you, Pragya, that you are a trained landscape architect. Am I right?
Yes,
Right.
that's right. 5 years of architecture, and then after that, did 2 years of postgrad in landscape.
Oh wow, that was amazing. See, I think it's a new career option over here, or maybe not well known. I think so. It's
Yes.
not that common in
Yeah.
India, right?
Not so much landscape architecture, you're right.
Yeah. Now that you are trained as an architect, as a landscape architect, yet your debut novel is a deeply emotional retelling of the Ramayana, right? So, when did
Yeah.
writing first enter your life, and was it always a dream, or did it happen like unexpectedly for you?
It's a very interesting question. I think more than my dream, it was my mother's dream. And it was to honor her dream. And, I didn't realize how it became a part of mine. And I think writing itself and the love for stories, and not just stories, not just reading stories, but storytelling came through her, through my mother.
Okay.
As a child, I was very fascinated by how she would read stories, and even like when I was very little, picture books. So always expanding, always imagining, very creative, and it fascinated me to a great extent. And I used to come back from school, write short stories. But
Oh,
again, my mother was a strict disciplinarian,
okay.
and she worried that it was distracting me away from my studies. And so she never nurtured that talent, for which she carried a guilt for the longest time. And asked me years later, after I'd done my architecture and landscape, she asked me to return back to it. And I think, yeah, she would keep encouraging me, inspiring me, which is why it's to honor that vision of hers that writing became a part of my life. And yeah, I mean, it may seem a bit different, like being an architect and a landscape architect and then to be a writer, but I think it's just that extension, that creativity, designing of emotional experiences. So in landscape or architecture, you design with bricks and mortars, and you do walls and verandas, and you through plants and trees and light and rhythm and all of that scale. But
Beautiful.
here you do it with words, you do it with characters. So ultimately it's about creating that emotional experience for the reader. So instead of taking through a building or a space, you're taking through the internal lives of those characters, and in this case Sita. So yeah, I think it's an
Gorgeous.
extension of sorts.
Beautiful. I think there is artist in you when you are an architect. That's what the result of you being artist is. Beautiful.
Thank you, you're so kind, thank
Ah.
you.
Okay, so Pragya, my next question is how much of your connection with mythology comes from your upbringing and childhood?
I think a lot of it. A lot of it, my connection with mythology has not been through formal research so much. It only came later when I was researching, focused to, this particular book, The Renunciation. But I think a lot of it came through my early childhood. I grew up in India. And so, just in the society, and my dadi, my grandmother, is a devout Hindu, And she would sing these songs, very devotional songs, very melodiously. And this is her voice was the one I woke up to every single morning, just hearing her sing. And it's with the devotion that she sang as well. And I think through festivals and just the discussions in the family, and I thought everybody had so much knowledge. And, I always felt I was lacking because, if there was any discussion and they would throw couplets here and there from the Ramayana or the Mahabharata or like from other scriptures. And it always fascinated me that, and I wondered, have they done any studies in mythology, to be able to know so much, which I thought our generation and the generation, further along the line, we lacked. And when I came here, I saw my children reading Greek mythology or Norse mythology, but mythology as a subject was never taught in India. I think it's also because, our mythology, you can't really separate it from religious sensitivity as well. It is a part of our religion, unlike other mythologies around the world. So I think it came through absorption, just hearing the family talk and, the festivals and all of that. So I think that was a great influence.
Right. So it was like in the movies, just you said, right? In the morning, you're waking up to the voice of your grandmother
That's right.
singing prayers and all. It's like Kejo movie, right? Karan Johar movie. That's what happens.
It was a bit like that. And also, my dadi would do these akhand parts for Ramayana. So she would do recite Tulsidas Ramayana. And so she would like start from the Balkan all the way, and do it in one sitting. So, we've seen how devout she was and how dedicated she was. So I think somewhere, subconsciously, it might have had a bearing.
So unknowingly it influenced you, and now the world
Yes.
has the renunciation, yeah? And your grandmother must not be even aware of what the influence she had done on you, the power of
Yeah.
that influence, yeah?
Yeah.
Good to know, so nice to know.
Or also like, the songs that she would sing, like, when we were sitting down, having chai and the songs that, she would just break out into these songs. And it was such beautiful songs I still remember.
Huh?
And the life lessons and yeah, so I think those memories are quite, fresh in my mind.
That's so wonderful. Okay, now that you're talking from London, is it? All right.
That's right. I'm based in London.
All right. So now, after moving to UK, did your relationship with Indian mythology changed? Like, did distance somehow bring you closer to these stories? Like, did it influence you or changed you in any way? The connection that you had with mythology?
Yeah, I think it did. It's like, how do you say that distance makes the heart grow fonder? So I think it did. When I was in India, I wasn't actively thinking about mythology. It was just in the air, like, I said about my dadi, or, it is there. Like, it's, you see it, you go to any temple, you see the sculptures and the murals, or, there are paintings, or there are handicrafts, or there are like, these beautiful clothes where, you would have like, these scenes from mythology depicted, or some of the other movies coming up, or their songs. It's like so much in the air, and you constantly absorb it and you constantly consume it without being conscious of it. However, I think when I moved here to the UK, that constant presence just vanished. And it just like, completely vanished. And I started to feel that connection to my roots somewhere, because I've been like so exposed to it. So I think it was a conscious effort then to go back to it. And also, like I mentioned previously, my children reading Greek or Norse mythology, or me reading Greek and Norse mythology. I love Neil Gaiman's work, for instance, and yeah, just wanting to go back to it to find out about our culture and our heritage, and just feeling that sense of pride. Once I started researching, I would say.
Uh-huh. So the connection became even more stronger once you were there, not in
Yes,
India.
definitely.
What you just said, that it is all around you and you don't pay attention to it. That's what happened to most of us in India. We really
Yeah,
are not so much into reading Ramayana, to be very honest. I've never read a Ramayana.
yeah,
All right, this
yeah.
must be the first mythological story that I have read in like one sitting, right? start to end I finished it. I have Gita, I have Ramayana, like access to, but I've not
Yeah,
finished it because I don't feel like I have to. It's like it's around us,
yeah,
you know. But
yeah.
you very rightly said that when there is void of it, then you get even more attracted to it. That,
That's right. That's right.
right? I
Yeah.
think that's
And
the
also,
key.
like, there's so many movies coming up, or, so it's not like we are not exposed to it. We are exposed to quite a lot of it.
Yes.
But yeah, it was an active choice to then research and read, so it just widened my perspective, I have to say.
So now I want to know that what was the exact moment or thought when you felt that Sita's voice was missing in the Ramayana and that her story needed to be told from her own perspective? What was that moment?
So that moment came quite early on, before I even considered writing it as a book or, even considered it as an idea. It was a thought that's, it just like a niggling thought that bothered me.
Okay.
So I was a child at that time, and we had gone to my grandmother's home, my nanny's home, and there was a discussion between my mother and my grandmother about the misconceptions around Sita as a submissive figure. As in, we do consider Sita as a dutiful figure, as a pious figure, as a devoted figure to Ram and, to her children, to the society. But we don't think of her as a resilient figure, as a strong woman, a woman with agency. And also, I think we largely remember as a society Sita as a woman who was renounced, who was banished by Ram, who was forsaken by Ram. And we think of, okay, Sita's and Ram's love was so profound, and yet he banished her. We always think of Sita in those terms. But actually, when we think about the truth of the final renunciation, not the first banishment, but the final renunciation, it was altogether different. And
Right.
nobody talks about that. That, it was a call taken by Sita. I don't want to give too much of the story. It's a known mythology to readers. So, it's not really like I'm giving away.
Yeah.
But it was an effort to shift that narrative. I think when I started to research on it, to find out about what was written in Valmiki's Ramayana, as opposed to, Tulsidas Ramayana, or there are several other regional Ramayans, there are about 3,000 of it. So when I started to research what was there in Valmiki's Ramayana, which is considered the authentic version of the Ramayana, when I started out, I was filled with, apprehension and doubts, how would this work be taken? Because, you're somewhere pitting Ram against Sita, which you don't want to do because, Ram is already revered. He's a god. And my intention was never to diminish Ram, but only to elevate Sita. So,
Right.
and showing that she was devoted to her husband, but, it's just an effort to shift that narrative around her. And when I started reading our epics, I realized that, how as a society, because it's a religious text,
It
we are
is.
somewhere afraid not to question it. But I think it is so important to look at these epics and find the answers within those epics. So I think it contains, all the moral values within the epics. And somewhere, if, certain acts have been performed, by the gods or otherwise, which you may not agree, it's only for the learning of the society. So this is a conclusion I came up with. Whatever may be Ram's call, whatever may be Sita's call, it is somewhere for the learning of the society. So that was a greater good that, cause that both of them had in their mind when they started out.
All right, now when you're saying all these things, what all is going on in my mind is the pictures that came into my head while reading the book because it is an emotional text. And if I, okay, I will be honest with you. When I finished the book, I discussed it with my husband and I was in tears. Literally, that's what you and your writing has done. I don't know if it is the mythology which has done it, but it is your pen. So I must say that you have done this. And oh, the magical, I can still feel tears.
Thank you.
It was painful to read it, I'll be honest. The second part that you said, I'm
Bless
sorry.
you.
It was so painful and I was scared that should I even talk about it because this will happen.
Oh,
I am
no,
a
I mean,
crier.
while writing it as well, I had such moments as well, what
Oh god.
Sita had gone through. and with the dignity and the grace that she had gone through.
Yeah.
And nobody heard her voice, you know. So it's just
That's
so
painful.
important to bring that to the fore.
Right, right. And the point is, I did not even know about that part. That's why I got so shocked about it and got so emotional that we don't even talk about it. You know?
Yeah, we as a society choose not to talk about it.
Yeah.
And you know, I think Ritu, what is very complex here is when we speak about mythology, because it is a religious text. So either that there is no healthy discussion, there is no debate around it, because you know when you consider Ram as a god, it complicates things a bit.
Right.
You know, either there will be like unquestioning reverence. People will not ask question because they're like, how can you question the god?
Right.
Or there would be like justification that those times were different, and or he did it out of love, he still loved her, which is also true. But we have to look at what message they jointly gave together to the family, even if they could have been failings as well, and God is okay with it. But I think it's we
Us.
as a society who would not be able to accept that
Right. We want to see
whatever.
only the pink picture, only the pretty
That's right.
picture.
That's right. That's right. So I think having that debate, being able to question our epics, but with reverence, but with respect. But it is so important as a society to question that, because these have long-lasting impacts otherwise.
Right. For so many generations, people have thought Sita to be the
Yes.
ideal wife, and that's how you should be. But what all she had been through is not so loudly spoken about. You have portrayed it in a very subtle way. It does not hurt anyone, it does not hurt any religious feeling, or doesn't even hurt the image of Ram, to be honest.
Like I had these questions and I had these doubts that what, because how would Ram be perceived, because I did not want to diminish his stature in any way. I think after I started reading Ramayana, I had not expected it, but I found myself being attracted to Ram even more, and I had expected the opposite kind of. Well, it's like complex to say that, but as a child, I was taught to worship Ram. I was taught to worship Sita. It was just like it's like conditional upbringing that you're
Right.
taught to worship these
Right.
figures. But when I started reading the Ramayana, I found such a softer side of Ram as well, and I was surprised because I was hoping that I'll find certain nuances that might upset me, but it was actually the opposite. He comes across exactly how he has been described by Valmiki. So when Valmiki sets out to describe Ram, he talks about a man born with 16 qualities which are unattainable for any human being. And why he teaches love and kush is because these boys can then tell the society about how a person should be. So to reach that exalted status. And Ram is actually described, but when you're competing with a poet like Valmiki, it's very different. And Sita, unfortunately, occupies only 10% of the epic. So I just feel that if Valmiki had given more space to Sita, showing her emotions, then we would not have needed to do all these retellings. I think the fact that there are so many retellings,
Okay.
and it's just that somewhere we want to give voice to her as well.
It's great that you did it. It is a perspective that we need to know about, and you have written it so well that it is reaching our hearts, not just our knowledge, but it is reaching our hearts, and that's the wonderful part of it. I must say, you have written it so vividly that when you are talking, I am getting pictures in my head about the moments that I read in the book. About, okay, these are the things I can talk about. Everyone knows that Sita was abducted and she threw her jewelry and all of that. When she was in Ashok Vatika, when Ram came to take her, and the stuff, everything is so vividly in front of my eyes, I can say. I think that's what a good writing does. You have written it
Thank
so
you.
nicely that I can imagine everything, and it doesn't feel like I am rereading the Ramayana. You know, It
Thank you
feels
so much,
different.
Ritu. Although I would not like to take any credit, I think it just like came through me. I genuinely feel that I'm not making that up. I don't think, I've never been a writer all my life. But I think I was just chosen and I was meant to be, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm just like so very grateful for that. So I think that's the only credit I'll take, but nothing else. But as you mentioned, that scene in Ashok Vatika, especially when she dresses up to go and meet Ram, and I don't want to give away too much,
Oh,
but then what happened? It's like, just like, the flip. So I think, I think that was the first time she was very crushed.
yeah. Oh God. And uh, mainly it comes later, you know. It is
Yeah,
described even more later in the book. That time you are heartbroken when you read it. Absolutely. You're like, how was she so calm? You know? I
yeah,
mean, it
yeah,
plays with your emotions so badly that you start getting angry. I was getting angry, I was getting emotional, I was feeling it all while reading the book. My God, everyone should read it. I'm telling you, everyone who knows even the word R from Ramayan should read it. Every women should read it and should know what all we are taught to be and what is the real picture behind it, which we are not
yeah,
told about, which is not discussed. Everyone should know it. That's what I think.
yeah. And I think what you just said, like every woman should read it, because I think Sita was not just submissive, but the fact that she reclaimed her agency, she was very resilient, is what women should remember. Not just that she was dutiful. Of course, true feminism lies in being dutiful.
Right.
As you know, Namita Gokhale had once said at Jaipur Literature Festival, Boulder, when it was held there. And she said that is the true meaning of feminism. Doing your duty, doing your responsibility, and standing up for yourself. And I think Sita just embodies those things, more than I think, like
And
anyone else. Yeah.
at least as humans, more than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
अब यहाँ तक वीडियो देख ही लिया है, so please subscribe to our channel so that we can bring interesting stories, interesting people, and interesting conversations to you.
Yeah, so now I want to know that why Sita? What about her silence, strength, and sacrifices moved you enough to dedicate an entire book to her viewpoint?
So, as I mentioned, Ritu, in the beginning, that somewhere when I was a child, it struck a chord that's, that we need, as a society, we need to shift that narrative. However, when I went and actually started reading Valmiki Ramayan, I was amazed to find that she only occupies 10% of the epic.
Right.
And even though she is pivotal to all the twists and turns, Ramayana means Ram's journey,
Right.
in literal sense, it means Ram's journey. So, rightly so, that, it's based on Lord Ram. But a lot of other characters are given much more importance than Sita. For instance, even during her wedding, there'll be like a description of Maharaja Janak and Maharaja Dashrath, and or later on to Lakshman. But Sita is given very little space in the entire epic. And somewhere, I think I was a bit angered, I was a bit hurt. And, I just wished, like, when you're talking about Sage Valmiki, he's almost like a god himself, like that kind of stature. I wished he had described her much more. And glimpses of it has been shown in Valmiki Ramayana. For instance, when Ram says he wants to go on an exile, but that Sita should stay back because, it would be unfair and, she should look after his family. And how she puts her foot down. So, she's a very strong-willed woman. But then again, there are contrarily, scenes where, she's shown as if, she was under a lot of fear or she was, very anxious.
Right.
But then it questioned me. I think it was just like, the poet using those, ways to describe an emotion. Because just come to think of it, when she was abducted by Ravan and she's dropping her ornaments at that time, she must be under so much stress. And to be able to have that,
Presence of mind.
clarity of thoughts,
Right.
that it will be a telltale sign for Ram to come looking for me. It like she must be so intelligent. And even during the exile, for instance, there are instances where she says to Ram that you should not wield the weapons unnecessarily. So like she counsels Ram as well when needed. So I have shown it a bit differently in the book. I've shown it that she used to worship the weapons as well, not just the Shivalinga, but worship the weapons because she knew the importance of the weapons. So somewhere I've taken those creative liberties, but it is coming from a source, like because she questioned. Or I think what is quite interesting is in Tulsidas Ramayana there is this description of Lakshman Rekha, but it is missing in the Valmiki Ramayana.
Oh,
But I think the sense was the same. I think they, what we were trying to say was the same. That Lakshman said, "You stay behind. You look after yourself. Don't put yourself into any danger." Or in Valmiki Ramayana, he's even saying that I will not go look for Ram. Ram will be fine. It might be somebody else. And then Sita uses a ruse. She tells Lakshman, some words that she should not have said, but she said it because her intent was so that he would go and look for Ram. So, she was a moralist, but she was not a crude moralist. She was not like, oh, I would not mince my words. If it was for the greater good, she was even ready to do that.
right.
And when Hanuman comes and looks for her in Ashok Vatika, it's so interesting. She tells Hanuman that, but how would Ram cross the ocean? Ask him to devise a plan to cross the ocean. So, she was very forward thinking. She was strategist as well. How do you devise a plan? She was a very clever, very intelligent woman.
And
And
she
she even
was in
denied
such
Hanuman.
a trouble at that. I'm sorry to cut you.
Yeah.
You just said that Hanuman came. She was in such a troublesome situation that if it would have been another character, it was easy for her to just go with Hanuman and leave the place. It was so easy for her. But it was her courage and the strategic mind that you said that she thought that how would he do it? And
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, she, as you said, she would have just hopped on his back and
Yeah.
left, and, as Hanuman even proposed. But her self honor mattered much more. And it was not just her self honor, because she knew that Ram's honor had also been vindicated. And only when he defeated Ravan would his honor as a ruler and how the society would view him later on be justified. And so I think it was like she was also thinking about Ram as a ruler and not just her own difficulties and her own sorrows. So, and then I have taken certain liberties, like later on in the text I have described how she speaks to the boys of what a just ruler should be. So but it is feeding in from these sources that I have then tried to build up.
All right. While talking, you just said that, there were different books that you have referred to. There were 3,000 Ramayans that are there
That's
in
true.
India, right? So I want to know that apart from Ramayana, which texts or granth or sources did you study while researching this book?
Yeah, so of course I studied the Ramayana, so I can't read Sanskrit. So I read Vivek Deobray's unabridged version of the Ramayana, so that I read. And then I also read Adbhut Ramayana. And then, it was not possible to read so many Ramayanas, but, we have so many fabulous writers in the country like Devdutt Patnaik or Anand Neelakantan who have also researched and then distilled their information. So I have read them, and I found out that Sita in certain Ramayana, like Adbhut Ramayana, Javanese Serat Khan, she was described as Mandodari's daughter. And in some Ramayanas, Lakshman is the one who kills Ravan. And in Adbhut Ramayana, Sita is the one who slays Mahiravan, who is even more powerful than Ravan. So there were all these sources. And now what I also realized is after reading and researching so much, is there's a lot of noise about the authenticity of Ramayana, So I think these days it's like, it's become more like a scholarly discussion about, what should be the right Ramayana or not. And also I read Nabita Gokhale's Sita. So there about, it's a collection of, essays and, like songs and all of that. So about what are the sentiments surrounding around Sita as well. And what I realized is amongst all these noise, somewhere we are talking about, very banal things. Okay, this did not happen in this Ramayana, or this did not happen in the other Ramayana. But as long as, the focus or the learnings is the same, I think that's what we need to concentrate on. My advice would be read widely, read Valmiki Ramayana definitely, but read other Ramayanas too. Read distillations by other scholars, and be curious, read widely, and then have these discussions rather than just reading one Ramayana
The
and don't
famous
contain
one.
yourself to that. That's right. That's right. Don't contain yourself to that. And I think the fact that, our murals, for instance, Valmiki Ramayana does not show Hanuman ji as, a long coil of tail. It's
Okay.
not shown like that. But the fact that, it's being covered in our temples, in the murals, somewhere, it's a living, breathing thing, and it has evolved over time.
Right.
And that's something we need to respect and not discard the Ramayana, the various Ramayanas.
Right. And I think, as you said, that you should keep reading. I think writers today are doing a lot of work into bringing back the mythology, and there are lots of books that people can read. Variety of options. Everybody is now a latest living topic, and so many books are there on it. So you don't have to go on to the basics and reading Sanskrit book directly. Now people have option to read a
Yeah.
lot of variety of books on mythology because of writers like you and so many out there who are doing study and reading so much and bringing such beautiful books to us and stories to us.
Yeah,
And
I think, and also once you read it, I think it made me more curious. And I was questioning, where is, it mentioned that Lavan Kush captured the Ashwamedh Yag, because it is not mentioned in Valmiki. So then I, started reading the Puranas and then started understanding, how all the links are there. And I will not say link because, it's not, it's part of one and not part of another. So I have taken certain liberties, which I have mentioned in the author's note. But yeah, just reading widely and familiarizing yourself is so very important.
it's entertaining as well.
Yeah, and also Ritu, it's so interesting that parts of Valmiki Ramayana are also contested. So some say that Uttarakhand is not part, which is the last section of the Ramayana,
Okay.
where Sita is banished. So it is not part of the original Valmiki Ramayana, and it's a later interpolation. And but what I found quite interesting is how can the Balkand, which is where the Ramayana starts, begin with Lavan Kush singing to Ram about his wife and Sita, and there are flashbacks and images coming to Ram's mind, and he's remembering Sita with such fondness, a wife who's no longer by his side. And so that made me question. And then I started researching, and then people say, oh, sections of Balkan are also interpolated. So, we never know what is the truth or what is not the truth. But I think these stories, which are part of us, part of our social fabric, our heritage fabric, part of our memory, I think these just need to be answered and, not discarded on the basis that, and who's going to decide what is correct or not
Right,
correct?
right. There's so many options there to choose from. Who is going to decide? Like, I will choose my narrative, you can choose your narrative, and it
Yeah,
is good to know that
yeah.
way, right?
Yeah, and giving that space and freedom to everybody to choose their narratives, because it's also part of the belief system.
Right, right, it
So
is.
yeah.
Now that you have told me about the different books that you have referred, so how much time you think must have went into researching and writing the renunciation? I mean, was it a structured process or an emotional evolving journey? How is it?
I think it was a bit of both, to be very honest. I think the book started as an emotional journey, and then I supplemented it with research. I mean, if I may use an architectural metaphor, then the research itself was like laying the foundation and the columns and the beam. So
Okay.
the structure was in place through that. But I think the whole idea of it was emotional, and then laying the structure, and then again emotional, because you think about the life of a woman. You don't want to think of her as a goddess. You want to portray her as a woman, as a human, with real emotions, so that people can relate to her much more. I could relate to her much more than the reader at that point of time.
Right.
And then I think I again went back to, after everything was done, I again went back to researching. So I read Ramayana a couple of times because then I wanted to embellish with, those details, like, how you would do in architecture as well, the pointing and all of that. And so things like looking at exactly, how Ravan dressed up, or if he had a bruise on his body, and why was that bruise there? So, because, a certain elephant Iravat had, struck his tusk. So he had that bruise. So just embellishing those details, or, what did Ram like to eat, or, what was the geography, the exact detail of the places that are mentioned. Or when there was a tussle between a combat between Jatayu and Ravan when he was abducting Sita, then a part of the Pushpak Viman fell. Things like I was surprised to know that Pushpak Viman was not just like a simple flying chariot, but it was built over several stories. So it was like a huge flying chariot.
Right.
So just these details, and I think just putting them down. I think for my sake, I just felt that it just felt more authentic and embellishing those. I think it was a long drawn process. I think close to 5 years, I have to say. It took me to research and read and write, take it more seriously, in the beginning, and then yeah, editing took a lot of time. So
My God, I wasn't expecting 5 years. Maybe, yeah, like you are absorbing it since your childhood, but 5 years for the book to come out is a okay big span of time. Lot of patience,
yeah.
yeah. So, Pragya, you wrote this book while managing a full family life, right? Like married with two children and living abroad. So, how did you balance research, writing, and motherhood? Why I'm asking this is there must be a lot of aspiring women who would want
Hmm.
to be an author, and family and motherhood, it just keeps them busy and keeps them away from this dream of writing and being an author, right? So, how did you manage it?
Yeah, I would encourage everyone, to just go for your dreams and not think about the limitations. Because somewhere, we keep thinking about the practicalities of life, and those things never happen. But I think if the intention and the passion is there, then your wildest dreams might just like come true. And for me, it happened in fragments. I have to be very honest. It didn't happen like, when I first started, it happened in fragments. I was thinking about this idea quite a lot. And even when I would find time in snatches. So thinking about the sentences maybe while I was cooking, while I was dropping the children to school, while I was commuting to work, or once I remember, I was so besotted with the idea. I remember once I woke up in the middle of the night and just grabbed my phone and just like wrote whatever the sentence that had come to my mind. And I still remember which sentence that was. And I didn't want to wake up completely because, I thought that, the magic of that sentence would be gone if I opened my eyes completely. So I think you just have to be besotted with the idea so much. You have to be really passionate, and it will just find its own way.
Now you are also living abroad, right? It is not normal. I must say this that people think that it is a very joyous thing to shift from India to another country, but it must be troublesome as well. So
Yeah.
setting into a new country, that too with family and kids and all, it is difficult. So I wanted to know that how did you balance it and living in abroad? Also, you were talking about India, how
Yeah.
difficult it is to find that in an unknown country, right? So that I want to know.
I was also like very lucky to be supported by a wonderful set of friends who would keep asking about the books and keeping that passion alive.
Oh,
And
how sweet.
with my mother, I would have these discussions. My husband, I made sure that he read every chapter, and and he was like so sweet, coming back with his feedbacks as well. So and also announcing to the world as well. So then you have to take a bit of credibility, like that
Huh.
you are on this journey, and so you better turn up with something. And finding that time, but also like even when you are not dedicatedly sitting at your desk just thinking about that idea, let it stew, and whenever you find time, then just write about it, but
Right.
thinking about it all the time, I would say.
Okay, okay. So it was not like sitting on your desk for like 24 hours and do it. It was not a continuous task for you, right? That's what it is. It just
I think it
happened.
later became a continuous task, but I
Mm-hmm.
think when I was coming up with the story and the structure, then it was more like an organic way, and then it became a rather dedicated, then I would have dedicated time to sit down and write. Yeah.
Okay. So, Pragya, would you
Mhm.
say the renunciation is a feminine retelling of mythology? Like, do you feel that giving importance to a woman's perspective is the need of the hour? And was that a conscious intent while writing this book? I think you have already given a little bit of idea of this question, but I would like to know from you with even more clarity that was that a conscious intent
Yeah.
while writing the book?
I'm glad you asked this question because when I first started writing it, or even now when I think back, I did not intend it to be a feminist retelling.
Okay.
So I wanted it to be a heroic retelling more than anything else. My protagonist happens to be a woman. That's another thing.
Uh huh.
But at the same time, now on the flip side, I also think back that when we talk about women from mythology or women in history, they are not given their due share, and it is important to tell their stories, but as heroes, not as like with an agenda, or as heroes. What has happened also happens is when we talk about mythology, we talk about these grand battles and wars, and we talk about the strength of the men, the honor, the valor of men. But that is missing in women because they did not participate so much in grand battles and wars themselves.
Right.
Even though they might have been quietly supporting. But what I wanted to bring across, I guess, was they should still be remembered for their strength of character,
Right.
so maybe not so much for the physical strength, but for the mental strength, and for the character. So I think that's the space that women in mythology occupy much more than men in mythology.
And I think you have already done a beautiful job onto giving a different perspective to the Ramayana. And so many of us, and maybe generation coming after us, would know this perspective as well. It will not be like us praying only Ram and praising only the king. And Queen was part of it. It will not be like
Yeah.
that for the coming generation. So it's a beautiful thing that you have done. That focus was
Yeah.
on Sita and her perspective and how she was. You've done a
Yeah,
wonderful
and if
job.
I may add, Ritu, a bit, like, I think I may be diverting from this question a little bit, but if I may, I think Sita's purpose in Ramayana felt like, she was only supporting Ram as a supporting role, for the glorification of Ram, And so, for instance, Ram, you always credit him for Ek Patni Vrat.
Right.
So, the monogamous marriage.
Right.
But nobody credits Sita for that. I mean, okay, I do understand at that time in society, it was very common for kings and rulers to take multiple wives. And it was not so common, like, to,
For
to
women to
stick
take
with a
multiple
single. Yeah.
husbands, right?
But think of it, like, if that was a norm in the society, the fact that Ram was only devoted to Sita was also, and I say the word also, to do with her character, her persona, her beauty, and how Ram was attracted to her was also to do with all of those things.
Absolutely.
It was definitely to do with Ram's character, but it was somewhere also to do with Sita's character.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will agree with you.
And I also feel that, we have cast Sita as a pious woman. We never talk about her beauty so much. We never talk about her character so much. Why was a war of such magnitude fought for her? Why would Ravan abduct Sita, and such a great war was fought for this woman? And Ram, like a lot of people say that, Ram could have taken another wife. Why did because he loves Sita, which is why, he traveled so many miles and sought her out, and, waged a war against Ravan and defeated him. And, but it is to do with Sita as well, right?
Absolutely.
Not just with Ram, is what I want to say.
And you said it really well. I must say that.
Thank you.
Okay, so Pragya, now I want to know that do you believe mythological stories need to be retold in more relevant, emotionally accessible ways so today's generation can connect with them?
Yeah, I think that's a very relevant question. And these stories, they need to be told. So mythology itself doesn't change, but the generations, they change. And with the changing generations, the listeners, they change. They have new set of questions, new anxieties, and new values in the society that need to be re-questioned and re-evaluated.
Right, right,
So I think mythology is timeless. The fact that it has existed for such a long period of time is goes on a lot to say about the timelessness of it. But the perspective of retelling needs to change. For instance, come to think of it, Tulsi Das was also he his was also a retelling.
right,
Because if the original was is credited to Valmiki, Sage Valmiki, then when Tulsi Das wrote it, it was also a retelling,
right.
but it was written from a devotional perspective. So you see a lot of devotion from Ram. That's why in many households you see Tulsi Das Ramayana being read much more than Valmiki Ramayana,
Right.
because it was written during the Bhakti movement. That was the need of the era. I think in today's day and age, the fact that I chose to write renunciation was also to highlight the true value in feminism. It is not to go against men, but to have enough agency to be able to assert, to be able to do the duty, and still choose the right path, to have a voice of your own. So there is like a very fine line between the two, between going against, but working in coordination, but having your value known as well.
So I want to know that how has writing the renunciation changed you personally as a woman, as a believer, and as a storyteller?
I think a lot of changes. So as a woman, I think the true value of feminism, so which is what I understood. So you work in, cooperation, and in coordination instead of subordination. So I think that is what changed. As a believer, yes, I think I'm more open to questioning our ethics with reverence, but I think it has broadened my perspective. I
Okay.
think I would early on not question, because I would have this fear, that you cannot question gods. But I think now I can, and I can try to find the answers from the same gods I question. So the answers are coming from them as well. And I think the last question was storyteller.
Yeah.
So as a storyteller, yes, I think I am more open to taking challenges. Because when I first thought about renunciation or writing retelling from Sita's perspective, I did think about, I'll be very honest, that, there are so many that exist, and from such established and wonderful authors that I myself so admire. Why should I pick this up? Why should I, not come up with a story which is like completely new and, does not have any precedence? Um, but then I thought about, like others in the past have also done it, and and it does not take away from what a previous writer has done, or it would not discredit your own work, but it would just add different layers to it, and just keep growing that, enriching our mythology much more as collectively. So I think so more open to taking challenges as a storyteller, I would say.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to know that which Indian mythological book is closest to your heart and how has it shaped your thinking or your life?
I mean, if you go back to the epics, I would say, of course, Mahabharata and Ramayana. I was always drawn to them. But if you talk about contemporary fictional retellings, I would say Chitra Banerjee's, Divakaruni's Palace of Illusion. I think she is a fabulous storyteller. The way she humanizes her characters, and like giving them a voice, making them feel real. I think it's a joy to read her work. So I
Okay.
would say. would be her.
So, will that be also a book that you would like to recommend to our readers, like that they should read as your recommendation?
Most definitely. I have really enjoyed that. The another one that I really enjoyed was Indu Sundaresan's Feast of Roses. So that was also very, very, very beautifully written. And the 12th Wife from Indu Sundaresan's as well. And if I have to pick up foreign writers in mythology, can I choose like historical work as well?
Of
Yeah,
course.
okay. So mythology, I would say I quite enjoy Madeline Miller's Circe and Song of Achilles a lot. I think she has a beautiful flair for writing, and she again humanizes her characters so much, which I deeply enjoy. And Amor Towles, A Gentleman in Moscow, I thoroughly enjoyed. So he took up this character who is contained in a hotel in Hotel Metropole in Russia, and the entire story is set there. And there are about, I can't remember, but 450, 500 pages maybe, odd pages. And when I first picked up the book, when it came out, and I was like, oh, it's a very limiting concept. I wonder what he might have done with it. And it was a curiosity with which I picked up the book. Like, just like one hotel. Like, how much can you
Right.
go and what can you do? But I think it's beautiful. So I highly recommend if you want to ever pick it up. A Gentleman in Moscow.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. There's so much to choose from.
Yeah.
All right, Pragya. So we are on to our last question, which is finally, what would you like to say to our readers? Why should they read The Renunciation? And what do you hope they feel after turning the last page?
It's a tough one, this one. Um, I think my readers will not get any answers if that is what they're looking for. I think I just invite them to sit by Sita, to understand her emotions, her reflections, her questions, her journey, and just listen to her. She is not, she's not going to give you any answers. And at the end of the book, when you turn the last page, I think a sense of stillness.
Ah,
That's it.
beautiful, beautiful. No, by the end of the book, I was so emotional, I can't tell you. See, I could just think of it and the tears could come up.
Yeah, so it's that void, and it's like your reflection. I just want that story to linger and stay with you, and that Sita to stay with you,
Oh,
her journey to stay with you.
beautiful. She does stay with you, that is for sure. I'm telling you, there are some markings and all I have done for the parts that I loved. The book is truly beautiful. It's not just emotional. I am emotional, so I get teary at times. But the book is not that emotional. Book is very beautiful. As you said, you feel like Sita sitting and talking to you. It does that to you, you know. The scenes are described so vividly that you feel that you are there sitting with Sita, looking at it, feeling it. Oh wow. Like it's very strong. It is a very strong narrative, I'm telling you.
And it's like I don't want people to feel bitter after reading it. I think that was a very prime intent. I want people to feel angry, definitely, and rightful anger. Uh, but I want people like, it's just feel a sense of poignancy, if I may say so, that pain I want. Just like, that stillness. Or, I don't even want to classify it. I think I will just stick to stillness.
That was a beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. The stillness is something that I think it stays with you. It will stay with you once you finish reading the book. Yes. And if
Thank
you,
you, Ritu.
my pleasure, darling. And if I can add, it does give you some answers. Me as a reader, I'm telling that it gives you some of those answers where you don't even know that you had questions for. You know, you
Yeah.
don't even know that was it Ram's decision? Was he okay with doing what he was doing? You know, it is there somewhere in us, but we don't, put a finger on it. But when you
Yeah.
read it, you realize that, yeah, why did he do it? And when you read it, you get the answer. You get so many answers that I didn't even know I had questions for, you know?
Oh my God, I'm so glad to know that. But it adds to that meaningful conversation and that discussion and that inquiry. So yeah, I think that is so important.
All right, Pragya, it was lovely, lovely talking to you. I learned so much more about the book and how it came. I was sure that it was not an easy task to do. I was quite sure, but knowing it how it really was, it really opens my heart even more to read more such books, and I am waiting for your new one.
Thank you so much, Ritu. An absolute pleasure to speak to you, and I hope we connect again. Such a
Sure,
pleasure,
sure.
and it was so insightful to hear about your reactions as well and your views. And I really enjoyed this discussion
Thank you.
thoroughly.
Thank you.
Thank
Completely
you.
my pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
I hope you enjoyed watching this episode. So please like, share, and subscribe to our channel because your support helps us bring such meaningful conversations and inspiring people to you. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next episode.